I'm Richard Gerhardt, founder of Gerhardt Law, a full-service intellectual property law firm specializing in patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
And I'm Elizabeth Gerhardt, not an attorney, but I work at Gerhardt Law helping with the marketing, and I have my own startups.
Welcome to Passage to Profit, everybody, the road to entrepreneurship, where we talk with entrepreneurs, innovators, and discuss the intellectual property that helps them flourish. Today, we have an amazing guest and who I'm really looking forward to talking with. His name is Kevin Surace, and he's a Silicon Valley innovator, a serial entrepreneur, artificial intelligence guru, disruptive keynote speaker, and Broadway and film producer.
Yeah, but how many patents does he have?
He has a lot. He has 94 patents worldwide, which makes him close to my heart. And he's also made some startups too. So going from zero valuations to $1 billion. So
can't wait to hear his story. And then we have two amazing presenters. These people are really cool. So Linda Hollander, I met at Small Business Expo in New York. If you have something that you want sponsors for, like a podcast or a show or a nonprofit or something, she's the woman to talk to. And then we have Steven Singer. Now, there is a story behind what he does. I'm going to let him tell it when his time comes.
I was amazed to see that he was going to be on because I didn't know there was a real Steven Singer
because of the billboards. I hate Steven Singer.
Absolutely.
So you're going to find out why people hate Steven Singer. I'm not telling. We're going to wait for him.
But before we get to our distinguished guest, it's time for IP in the news. And this week, we're going to be talking about Google and a new policy that's obviously designed to encourage people to use AI. And if you've been listening to the show and following, we talk about artificial intelligence frequently. And most of the disputes around artificial intelligence are being worked out in the court system, right? And so they're trying to decide, well, if AI makes a creation, can there be an inventor or can there be an author to it? And there's a lot of debate about who's going to own this content going forward. So Google has decided that if you use one of their tools like Vertex or Duet, those are two Google AI tools, that they will defend you in a lawsuit if somebody sues you for copyright infringement.
So the creators basically that feel like the AI has stolen their creative content and used it to make something new have to go up against Google if they want to file a lawsuit.
Right. And this is setting a pretty substantial policy because you may be willing to sue somebody, one small player may be willing to sue another small player, but if Google's going to defend the AI generator, then that makes that kind of lawsuit a lot more expensive and is a real discouragement to pursuing that kind of lawsuit.
Well, there's a lot of conversation around this topic. Like we were talking to one of the radio personalities the last time we were at iHeart in Manhattan, and he was saying, but what if somebody takes my voice and generates my voice using AI to promote a product that I don't believe in? What am I going to do about that? Right.
And so there's still a lot of issues to be worked out. I just think that this policy by Google is really interesting. And, you know, we have with us Kevin Surace, and Kevin is an AI guru. He talks on this topic frequently. Kevin, what are your thoughts about this new policy of Google's?
So thanks for having me, guys. Look, I think this is an important move, and I think we're going to see it by the big tool makers, if you will. And the reason is they are putting protections into these tools that don't allow you to generate something that you shouldn't, and also generate something without attribution, for example. And you know copyright law a lot better than I do, but you know, we all learn from the books that we read. We could read 100 novels and then we go write a novel. Now, we can't write a derivative work, of course, but we can go write a novel, right? And that's not illegal as long as it's ours, but it was informed by everything we read. And I think that you're seeing Google say, with our image and or text generation, we put the right guardrails around it to not generate a derivative work and not generate something that is exactly the same without attribution. But otherwise, you should be protected because you couldn't possibly know everything we trained on, right? I.e. Google. And therefore, you're going to have to trust that they put the right protections in so you can't get sued. And lastly, I think you hit the nail on the head. Is it's going to make it hard to sue individual users of these tools because Google has a lot of money and a big legal team.
And big legal team, right. Well,
Yeah.
I think the interesting part, though, is how do you create a tool that really draws the right line between something that's original or versus something that relies too much on something that somebody else has already created?
Well, so how these large language models work, and I think that's one that we can look at. A large language model works by statistically placing one word after another. It has learned 1 trillion phrases, give or take, and from those trillion phrases, it knows how to build the English language based on the sentence structure of the English language. And I'll give you an example quickly, and then your prompt. So if we said today is Kevin's birthday, it isn't, but if we said that, it would probably respond happy. Then what would come after happy? Well, we know birthday, and maybe a third word, Kevin. They're the only practical responses, right? So now if I say I would like a poem about the weather where it's raining outside in the style of Shakespeare, well, it kind of knows the style of Shakespeare, right? It's read plenty of Shakespeare. It was attributed as Shakespeare, and so it'll go ahead and write that in that style. Carefully, not exactly quoting anything from a book without attribution. So there's been rules put in place to make sure that it doesn't exactly do that. And I think they've tried to put these rules in place so that no one's going to call it a derivative work, right? So you're not going to grab this novel and just change the names of the people and it's exactly the same story.
That's great. And I think it's really interesting. This is the first time I've really ever heard of how the AI process works. So I really thank you for that information. Steve, what do you think about all this?
Well, not only am I not an expert on AI, on artificial intelligence, I don't even know if I have any real intelligence. So it's a big problem for me. I'm a dopey jeweler. I can tell you that on our previous website, our previous platform, and our new platform, artificial intelligence was built in. And I was, at least at my level, I was slightly disappointed, as to what it could do and what it couldn't do and how much work and how much input it takes. I think it has unbelievable potential. And I think the fact that Google is protecting everyone is obviously that's a game changer. I did a keynote speech at Google a couple months ago about a different topic on a different platform. And Google is one of the most amazing companies on earth. And the things that they're doing, I don't think we even have a clue what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year. I think if we talk a year from now, we'll be in a whole different world with this. This AI is just, I just don't know. I don't have the capacity to understand everything that it's going to do.
My concern with AI is that it's just going to make me lazy, right? Because where I used to write out an introduction for a show, I ask ChatGPT and it writes it for me and it does a really good job, right? And if I don't quite like that one, I'll ask it again and I'll get a slightly different version, right? So I wonder overall if our ability to generate content ourselves is going to diminish over time.
Well,
right?
one of the things I think we have to worry about too is just, I think I'm not alone with this. I don't know any phone numbers anymore since I have my iPhone. I used to remember 50, 100 phone numbers. So I think the fact that anytime something does it for you, automates it for you, when you say it makes you a little stupider, I think, and a little lazier, I think it's true. And that's a concern.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great. I mean, that's a great question. The question is do we really need to know all those phone numbers if we don't have
Right.
to?
Right. Well, let me give you an example that everyone takes for granted now, if that's okay, which is the following. Back in 1985, Excel spreadsheet showed up. It's probably the last time anyone did long division by hand, except to teach our students, maybe teach our kids. And we don't seem to rue the day that we couldn't do long division anymore. I mean, we could probably do it, but we don't do it every day. And so Excel became a tool that scared financial people, but pretty quickly accountants found more work to do and they became the robot overlords of Excel, but they didn't add up numbers in columns and rows anymore. And so no one looks back and says, oh, I wish I could just add columns and rows. They go, we now have tools that do that for me, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've had a few moments when I've missed my long division, but
You see
Kenya,
my point? The
yeah.
tools come around, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't miss walking to Philadelphia. I prefer to drive.
Right. And now we've got these large language models, and that's one part of AI, one small part, but people are talking about ChatGPT and OpenAI and things like that. And these large language models are finally a language tool. We've had math tools for 40 years, including the calculator before that, and now we have a language tool. And that's going to make us much smarter about prompting and editing, and probably not as strong at writing from a blank slate. That's true. And maybe that's okay.
Most of my Chat GPT information that I get is written in good grammar. I mean, it's better than what you see on Instagram, or Facebook. So
yeah,
Linda?
The prose is quite good, way better than ours can be.
Yeah.
Linda, what are your thoughts here?
I actually help people write sponsor proposals, and I went to ChatGPT and said, write me a sponsor proposal. And it was very underwhelming because it hit some key things that needed to be said, but it didn't really get into the psychology of convincing somebody to make the decision to give you money and underwrite your business or your event or your podcast or whatever. So unfortunately, it's not there yet with what I do. But I think there are a lot of really good uses for AI. And as we've been talking about, it puts us in a whole different model, because instead of being in creative mode, we become in editor mode. So if I'm going to write an article, let's say, and I do ChatGPT, then I just edit it. And I think something is lost a little bit there, because I am a high creative and I love creating things. But I think it's good for a lot of things. And the Google, wow, that I didn't even know that. So we'll see what happens with Google stepping up like that to protect people.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly going to drive AI even further into our lives, I think, if people can use it with little fear of legal repercussions. Kenya?
Well, I would say the conspiracy theorist in me is a little skeptical still, only because, I liked the point that Kevin made about Excel and all these other advances. But I think my only issue with AI and its use is the use of people's likeness, right? So when it comes to using people's voices and things to create something in a space where typically it would be a human. I'm also concerned about the necessity for humans, right, to do like daily things and job creation and job loss. So there's a lot of things that I feel like, great, this is awesome, great technology. But on the other hand, I'm skeptical because I don't want it to replace what potentially could be opportunities for humans to function and have livelihood.
Well, those are great questions. And I think, with Kevin here, we'll have a chance to get into more detail on those a little bit later in the show. But I guess for now, I would just say, AI is here to stay. Whether we like it or not, it's forcing itself into our lives. And if you're not using it and you're in the professional sphere, then you're probably going to lose out. And that's just unfortunately the bottom line there.
You know who is going to win though? All the lawyers.
You're going to be plenty busy.
They find a way, don't they? Yes.
Copyright lawyers.
Well, speaking of intellectual property, if you have an idea or an invention that you want to protect, contact us at Gerhardt Law. We work with entrepreneurs worldwide to help them through the entire process of patenting, trademarking, and copywriting. And if you'd like to learn more, you can visit us at learnmoreaboutpatents.com or learnmoreabouttrademarks.com for a free consultation or downloadable content. So that said, I think it's time now to pick up again with Kevin Surace, and he is an absolutely amazing guy. I'm going to read a little bit about him. It goes on for pages and pages, but I'll try to keep it short. So what?
I don't think I've ever known anyone that has 94 patents before, so
That's a lot of patents. That's a lot. That's a
amazing.
lot of
it's
innovation.
amazing.
So, but he's a Silicon Valley innovator, a serial entrepreneur, CEO, TV personality, and edutainer, which is a word that we use a lot around here, right? Edutainment. Kevin has been featured by Business Week, Time, Fortune, Forbes, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, Fox News, and has keynoted hundreds of events from Inc. 5000 to TED to the US Congress. And I'm sure that was quite an event. He was also Inc. Magazine's Entrepreneur of the Year, a CNBC Top Innovator of the Decade, World Economic Forum Tech Pioneer, and Chair of Silicon Valley Forum. He has a technical background with 94 worldwide patents and has built multiple startups from ground zero to 1 billion valuation. So that's really an amazing resume, Kevin, and we're really pleased to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And in preparation for the show, I went to ChatGPT to generate questions for this interview.
Excellent.
So the first question is, does AI understand dad jokes?
With the correct prompting, you can ask it, how would it interpret this joke as a good joke, a bad joke, a fair joke, something that people would laugh at? And it's going to give an opinion on that, right? Now, even when I say the word opinion, of course, I'm anthropomorphizing the darn thing. It doesn't actually have an opinion. Again, it's a math model. Maybe I didn't state that earlier, but ChatGPT anyway, these large language models, they are math models, and they are guessing at the probability of one word coming after the next based on your prompt and based on what it's learned. And it's learned everything we've ever written virtually, right? So yes, it will opine on that. But as Linda pointed out, the best use of a large language model like ChatGPT is to give you ideas that you didn't otherwise have. This would be the case in a legal case even. Give me some ideas that I might not have thought of, and it'll give you 12 of them. You wouldn't use them verbatim. They may be wrong. They may not be correct. They may not apply. But wow, I've got ideas that I didn't have. It's like this assistant sitting next to me.
Oh, absolutely. When I asked that question, it came back with 32 potential questions to ask you. And if I had sat down and thought about it, I maybe would have come up with 10. So
right.
There's a lot more content there now than I would have been able to generate on my own.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I want to switch gears just a little because I did go on your App Vance website. And that is a use of AI that I don't think a lot of people have talked about. Everybody knows, well, not everybody, most people know ChatGPT, right? But what you're doing with AI is kind of quality assurance, or is that what you would call it? Or
yeah, software quality assurance, finding bugs in software. That's right.
Yeah, and I saw that you can do like Salesforce. We have an ERP system. I think it would be kind of scary to have your software go through it. I think there's a lot of
there's bugs in that system.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when your software identifies the bugs, then what happens? Do they fix them or?
So let me baseline this for a second, and then I'll answer the question if you don't mind. Is people over the last year think AI is ChatGPT and ChatGPT is AI. That is one instantiation of work that has been done since the 1940s and 1950s in artificial intelligence. There are literally hundreds of algorithms, all of which can be applied, what we call applied to a variety of fields, right? And in fact, AI in most large businesses has been highly available for a decade or more to analyze big data. So we've been doing this for a long time. Facial recognition on Facebook is AI, right? All of a sudden, ChatGPT has become the soup du jour, the AI of the day, but it's just one version of a type of AI used for actually, it's just a very huge neural net built on 1 trillion phrases. So to answer that question, what we do at AppVance, and I'm involved in a number of companies, but AppVance is fascinating because millions of people worldwide try and test software, and most software is behind the firewall, like your ERP system, meaning it's for your internal use. A large bank may have 10,000 to 15,000 applications. Almost all of them run the bank, and maybe 8 of them go to the outside world. It's really fascinating. So of course you want to test your e-commerce sites and things, but you got to test the stuff that runs your company. And this is a really hard problem to solve. And we've been working at it for 12 years, introduced the first product about 5 years ago that uses AI. And the idea is to generate automation scripts, call it automation or test automation, automatically with virtually no human involvement. So you train the AI what's important in your application, what are the outcomes, what are you looking for, and just let it go generate thousands and thousands of flows trying to look for problems. And to date, AI finds way more problems than people writing test scripts themselves or people testing. Now, what's interesting about that is it can write these tests about 1,000 times, about 100,000 times faster than humans could. So that's a big number, and it sounds like a marketing number, but it's a measurement actually. And the bottom line is servers in the cloud are just way faster than our human brains, right? So we're going to get to a point where I think in the next 5 to 10 years, all software bugs are really found by AI, and people can analyze which ones are the most important to fix, but they're all going to be found by AI. It would be ridiculous to think that we're still sitting there writing test scripts in some kind of code like Selenium and hoping that it finds bugs for us, right? That it's going to be ridiculous.
Well, will it be able to fix the bugs, do you think?
Yes,
eventually?
absolutely. That's a great question. Already there is with Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and also Codex from OpenAI, there are tools now that are making programmers about 50 to 60% more productive than they were just 3 months ago. It's amazing. And that already completes some of your code. Now, even that completion of code, that automatic generated code, isn't perfect, right? But we're getting to the point where we will be able to find the bugs, find the part then the next step is find the piece of software that is causing those bugs, automatically generate new code that replaces the code that caused the bugs, and close the gap. This is fascinating. Now, a lot of you will be thinking, what do we do with the people? Well, we start focusing more on what it is we want our software to do and less about making it do it, right? What do we want it to do? And so some people are saying, what happens to all the programmers? We've got these millions of people who write code. There will still be code to write, but you will be now 10 or 20 times more productive than you are today, being able to generate far more features far faster. And we all want features. We want them faster. We want our software to do more, and we want it to be bug-free.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
this is actually good.
Yeah, I mean, every time I start to feel uncomfortable about AI, because a lot of what you're saying honestly does make me a little uncomfortable. I also hear the positive side, and then I look at like a database for a business I'm familiar with that has all sorts of problems and inconsistent data. And I'm thinking, well, wow, wouldn't it be great if you could go through there and clean all that up? Because it would be just about impossible for a team of humans to do that. Right. And
That's right.
You look at the benefits and they're irresistible. Right. And but then there's a price for that. And the price is we don't know what the world's going to be like if we make all of those changes. We can guess, but we don't really know. Right. And that's the fundamental.
We can look at history. You're right. We can look at history. And when the wheel came out, if you were a person who carried things on their back and then there was a wheel, you go, my life is over. What will the world possibly be like if everyone has 2 wheels and then 4? It's over, right? And if you were an accountant in 1985 and spreadsheet came out, you said, I'm going to resist this horrible thing. It's going to take my job. There are more accountants employed today than there were when the spreadsheet came out, and they've all become spreadsheet experts, right? So all of these tools that we have put out over the years have made humans more productive. Thus, the net result of all of this is that GDP goes up. And yes, it's a long, there's a long tail there to make that happen. But the more productive companies are and people are and countries are, the higher the GDP and ultimately, sort of a better living comes out of that, right? So if you as a lawyer could handle twice as many clients as you have, if you could, and we're not there with AI, but if you could, well, that's pretty good for your law firm. It's probably good for the client. It's probably good for everybody. Everybody gets faster service. You've got more clients. Life is good.
Well, I'm glad to hear somebody saying that more lawyering is actually a positive thing. But anyway, we have to take a break. We'll be right back. Fascinating discussion here with Kevin Surace. You're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gerhart. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the road to entrepreneurship. We have such an amazing guest today, Kevin Surace. This guy will blow your mind with what he knows and what he's done. And listening to him is such a pleasure. And Richard and I have hogged the conversation. So now I'm going to throw it to Kenya. Kenya, do you have a question for Kevin?
Oh, it was a great conversation. And before we went to break, we were talking about some of the bugs. And I actually came across an article in Forbes magazine about just some of like the downfalls and the pitfalls of AI. And one of the things that they bring up in the article is bias and discrimination. So it says that AI systems can inadvertently perpetuate or amplify societal biases due to bias training data or algorithmic design. And then there was also an issue with ethical dilemmas, right? So instilling moral and ethical values in AI systems, especially in decision-making contexts with significant consequences, presents a considerable challenge. So I just kind of wanted to see what your take was on all this.
It's a really great question. Thank you for asking. So let me separate AI systems that you're building within your business, say HR or whatever, from the large language models. Okay. And we'll just talk about them really quickly separately. If I'm building AI, and I'll give you a great example, I'm building AI. A lot of people have to go through all of your HR data for all of your employees and make a judgment call on who makes it to the top in the company versus who doesn't. This is a fascinating thing, right? We all want to study that. Who makes it to president, who makes it to VP, because you might bring in 3,000 people a year. Only one every 5 years makes it to vice president. Why is that? What does it make? What makes them special? Now, that data is highly biased. You didn't mean to make it biased, but it is. And I'll give you an example. Let's say at the VP level, you had someone that graduated, say from my alma mater, Rochester Institute of Technology, and they interview all candidates or all candidates in this division. Well, if a candidate comes in and happens to say, oh, by the way, I went to your alma mater, the chance of them getting hired is much higher than someone who didn't go to your alma mater, which is because you already bond on something. You bond on it's Rochester Institute of Technology. Did you have this professor, et cetera, et cetera? Already, and again, not getting into race or creed or anything else, we have a bias. And so that bias overemphasizes people that went to RIT, not because they're better students. I think they are, but I'm biased. But I'm biased. But so did that VP. And by the way, we all do this without trying to introduce bias. We introduce bias. And so those biases are stuck in the data. And now you have to figure out how they got stuck in there. Why is that? And the chance of figuring out that one VP 20 years ago interviewed and mostly hired people from RIT, it'd be hard to figure all that out, right? So that's one area, and you can think of 15 others. So that's a challenge. Now, with large language models, they've gone out and learned from everything we've ever written that's on the web. And that has a bell curve of representation. Well, that bell curve itself is biased. So you could get certain people of certain countries, the United States would be an example, that put far more or have put far more onto certainly the English web than any other country for lots of reasons. It'd be population and access to the internet earlier and GDP and things like that. So we are overrepresented. And so if you naturally ask even an image generator, generate an image of a beautiful human or beautiful woman or beautiful man or whatever it is, it's going to generate right at the middle of that curve, which is unfortunately likely white, likely thin, likely looks like a model. It's because it's right in the middle of the curve. It doesn't know any better. Now, if you prompt it differently and say, what I want is something over here, it will also, of course, it has the capability to generate that. But if you don't pre-prompt it and you're not careful, you're getting something down the middle because that's what a model does. It doesn't know any better unless you ask it. So these biases are built in, and and it's hard to get rid of them. Now, here's the bigger problem, if you want to talk about the problem. The more we use these models for example, generating content for our blogs and blog posts and our advertising, and the more that people don't realize that they can prompt these things to go to the edges and do some really wonderful things, right? So you could prompt it to generate an image of rather than just a man, you can say an older man with gray hair who's a little overweight, blah, 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 right? You could do that, but people don't. So they generate, what happens is they'll start generating the same thing. That'll make the middle of the bell curve when the model goes out to learn from the web bigger and bigger and bigger, because it's now learning from its own generated content, not knowing it generated it or another model generated it. So it could end up overemphasizing the middle of that bell curve and continuing to de-emphasize the breadth of the human experience. So there's one of the I hope that answered the question.
It does. That was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's so what you're saying is that the culture, the people who are relying on Chat GPT, and to the extent that it's sort of permeating what we do, there's going to be sort of this natural gravitation to some sort of center, right? And everything, there's going to be eventually sort of a sameness about.
There's eventually a sameness.
There's going to be a sameness about everything that happens, which is interesting. I mean, in some places you want sameness, but in some places you don't. I mean, when it comes to things like human rights and civil liberties, you want some sense of equality and similar treatment. But when it comes to other types of endeavors, creative endeavors, you don't want everything gravitating toward the center, right?
Right. Well, look, if you're Xi or Putin and your people now have access to some kind of model like this, but one that was developed over there, your center is going to be quite different than ours in a democracy, right? And in fact, you may, even if it went and learned from the whole web, you're going to put rules around that force that center to where you want it to be. Because you don't want people in Russia, for instance, asking, what is the best way to live? And it says a democracy. No, that no.
Right.
And same in China, right? So they're going to set rules that push the model in certain ways. All of our models that we've got access to today, including Bard and ChatGPT and Llama and others, have a huge rules engine at the output. And I mean millions of rules. So when you say, do you love me? It now has a rule that says, even though I recognize how to construct sentences that would reply to that because I read all these novels, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say I'm a model that is incapable of love, because people took it before those rules were in place to say, oh, this thing is sentient. It knows how to love. It doesn't know how to love. It just puts sentences together. It's all it is, right? It's not sentient at all. I can guarantee it. It's just math. So lots of rules, like how to build a nuclear bomb. I'm sorry, I'm not able to discuss that, right? Or things that we don't think are appropriate for our society. So we put millions of rules on the output of these things. So you don't always see the original output. You see that filtered by a set of rules.
Fascinating. And so now, who controls ChatGPT or the AI engines or the large language engines are the people who set the rules, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And who is doing that now?
Well, yeah, so I can answer that. Actually, OpenAI and Google and others have hired people overseas in all kinds of crazy countries, from Turkey to like Vietnam, and they've given them a set of areas that they never want the AI to be able to respond in. And we hire people over there because they're $1 an hour instead of $25 an hour, basically. Now, it's a hard job because you are looking at the requests that people are making, and every day you go, we don't want that response to ever be there again. Let's put a guardrail in. We call them guardrails. Let's put a guardrail in to not allow you to get that response. So people try to break these rules all the time and try to get the thing, to jailbreak, basically. And then their job is to put it back in jail. So for OpenAI, it was over 1,000 people for a year wrote rules. Over 1,000 people for a year, and they were each writing potentially 100 rules a day. Think about that.
Was
So-
anybody reviewing those? I mean, I ultimately somebody is controlling this and they're not elected by. the
Right. That
people
is
of the
true.
country,
That's true.
Right?
You're right. And so you know, you can choose to use those models. There are models that are out in the open source world today that have no rules. You could write your own rules. They're just free and they will tell you that they love you. You know, we dealt with this. I built the first the first AI virtual assistant models back in the 90s that ultimately got licensed and became things like Siri and General Motors OnStar and Alexa and all of those things. So the core technology was developed in the late 90s at a company called General Magic. And her name was Mary. Actually, her literal name, the person who recorded the voice, her name is Mary Mack, literally Mary Mack. And so Miss Mary Mack would record the voices, and she recorded thousands and thousands and thousands of words and phrases and all the things to have her literally talk to you on your phone. It wasn't one day before people said, "Oh, Mary, I'm so in love with you. Will you marry me?" And we had to say, I don't know if these guys are stupid or whatever, but you know, how are we going to respond to that? So we decided to not block that. Instead, we'd respond the way the human would, which is, "Oh, I'm already taken," or "Oh, I'm not available." And she had multiple various random responses that would come back. And we didn't make any bones about it. We just said, you want to play that game? We'll play along.
Well, I've read recently that there are AI models that are substitute companions for people
That's right.
who want a romantic relationship.
Well, didn't the Big
but
Bang
don't-
Theory have that? on there?
Yeah. I'm sure it did somewhere. But I mean, this is certainly feasible. I don't know. Maybe it's, you know, desirable.
Quite easy to do today. The movie Her showed this, right? Him falling in love with an AI model. We can absolutely create a large language model that has no guardrails around that and will interact with you in every way of a relationship, right? Forget robot
Wow.
right now, just on the screen, every way of a relationship.
Wow.
And the reason it can do that is this. Remember, these models were trained on fact and fiction. If they've read enough fiction novels, they clearly can describe and can reply to loving kinds of things, right? So if they're programmed right and they've got a large enough data set, again, from novels, they could be very convincing as a partner. And especially in a country where there might not be enough women, there's a lot of men, there's not enough women for a whole bunch of reasons. You could imagine those guys, this is the only, you know, true, I hate to say true partner because that's not fair, but you know what I'm saying. It's probably the only true kind of interaction they're likely to have if the guy wants one with a woman, right?
That's really sad.
It may be.
Taking the gamer in the basement to a whole new level,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's.
And
but-
it's probably the gamer in the basement that's been stuck down there for 20 years and now they have a you know, a real kind of companion, even
Yep.
though it's an artificial companion. But let me tell you about the good use of that. How about older people we're all getting older in this country, and people are getting to the age where we're getting to a time where in the next 20 years we'll have more people over 80 than we have under 20. And of course the problem with that is there's no one to take care of them. So they need companionship, but you just can't, even as their child, you can't be there 24/7. So a digital companion, of which there are already several available, is amazing for these older people. They feel that they have a relationship with this digital companion. They're not stupid. They know it's digital, but at least it's a relationship. And I'll tell you what, that digital companion will listen to your story, the same one, over and over and over again.
Right.
So Kevin,
Goodness.
so we have time for one more question before we wrap up, but where do you see the future of AI going?
So regular AI outside of LLMs is going to continue to get better at sorting through our data, fixing our data, and giving us real insights into that data, including pattern recognition. Pattern Computers, another company I work with up in the Pacific Northwest, and what they're doing to look at drugs that can treat certain kind of cancers and finding the patterns to match what can happen is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So these are huge breakthroughs. The humans would have never said that molecule, really? I wouldn't have tried that, right?
Wow.
That's for putting out a fire. I'm making it up, but you get the point. And so there's that going on, and that's going to change medicine forever. And this is very exciting. The second thing is on when you look at large language models, 5 years from now, maybe 2 years from now, it's just going to be a tool that we all use. Of course, we use Excel for math. We use an LLM for language. It's what we do. If you write blog posts all day, of course, you're going to use an LLM to give you the first start of writing that blog post. You'll probably edit it. You'll probably change it. But you might have gone from taking 2 days to write a blog post and edit it and think about it and sleep on it to like 20 minutes. So we may have made you 10, 20, 40, 50 times more productive. And in the end, I call this, actually, I'm borrowing this from Reid Hoffman, so I will borrow it from him, is amplified intelligence, AI, amplified intelligence. What we're doing is amplifying your intelligence, because in the end, you're in charge, you own it, you decide what the prompts are, and you decide what you use from its outcome. But we're amplifying your intelligence. We can make you 5, 10, 20 times the number of brains that you had. So instead of 1 brain power, you could have 20 or 30 or 50 brain power.
Well, that sounds good
That's
to me.
Pretty scary.
Yeah, Kevin,
My
Surace, everybody.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. Yes.
So thanks so much for joining us. We hope you'll stick around. It's been
Absolutely.
an absolutely fascinating discussion, and you brought a perspective on artificial intelligence that I have not seen before. So thank you very much for that. And I know our audience is grateful too. You're listening to Richard and Elizabeth Gerhardt on Passage to Profit. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit, and we just had the most amazing discussion with Kevin Surace, and all about artificial intelligence.
And how it's changing the world.
There's so
and
much to know.
You may
And
think you don't want to use it now, but in a couple of years, you'll say, how did I live without it?
how did I live without it?
Yes.
Anyway, it's time now for our Power Move segment. Kenya Gibson, tell us who's on Power Move today.
Yes, excited about Power Move today. I'm going to be talking about Larry Morrow, who is a serial entrepreneur. He was recently on my Power Move podcast telling his story about how he started off by founding Larry Morrow Events as a promoter, an entertainment business platform that's featured celebs like Floyd Mayweather, Drake, Rick Ross, Meek Mill, and then he moved into launching Larry Morrow Properties, and he's the owner of the New Orleans-based restaurant Morrow's and the legendary Treehouse. So if you're ever in New Orleans, you want to check those places out. He also talked a lot about his book, his self-help book, He also talked about his self-help book, All Bets on Me, the risk and rewards of becoming an entrepreneur. So you can check out his full story on my Power Move podcast.
That
Wow.
sounds great. And where can people find your Power Move podcast?
Wherever you listen to your podcast.
All
So
right.
Spotify, you can watch it on Spotify. So I always tell people to go to Spotify because you can actually get a visual of it.
That's great.
Excellent.
Elizabeth, what's
Yes,
new
so-
with you?
Well, yeah, so I still have Blue Streak Directory. It's a video directory of B2B businesses, but I'm taking a little break from it right now. I think with the struggles I've been having, I kind of have to wait for the tech to catch up a little bit. And I'm also doing Passage to Profit, which I love doing this. I learn so much every single time we do this. We have the most amazing people on. I have a podcast with Danielle Woolley called the Jersey Pod Cats, where we talk about cats. I have started a new podcast. Well, I'm helping a ghost with a podcast, actually. It's called Ghost Stories, The Flip Side. It's by a ghost named Fiona Fabble, and she can communicate with her niece, who can get her on video with audio. And when she passed over, she found a bunch of ghosts that were really mad because they have ghost stories told about them and they don't get to tell their side. So she's telling the side of the ghosts. And it's for children.
It's for
obviously.
children.
So Fiona Fabble, Ghost Stories, The Flip Side, where she tells the ghost story and then lets the ghosts give a rebuttal.
Well, that sounds great. I've heard
It's a
some of
lot of
these and they're
fun.
really hilarious. So where
And-
can we find Fiona?
Right now it's on Libsyn and Apple. I'm getting it. I just launched it today, actually.
Yeah.
And it's on YouTube. And it's Ghost Stories, The Flip Side, and Instagram is at Fiona Fabble. So
So yeah, absolutely. These are great stories. They're hilarious, and they're hosted by none other than our very own Elizabeth Gerhardt. So
No, they're hosted by Fiona Fabelstable, the ghost.
but you play Fiona, don't you?
No,
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 you
she's-
don't. Oh,
she's
there's a
really
really
a
is a
ghost.
there really
She's
is a
really ghost. I'm
Fiona.
just
Okay,
helping them out.
all right.
No, her
Okay.
niece Fern is the one who helps her.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Anyway, enough about that silliness. So we are very excited to have Linda Hollander here today. I met her at Small Business Expo in New York. She's a sponsor concierge, and I'm going to let her tell everybody what she does. Welcome, Linda.
Great to be here. Okay, so I want to talk to all the entrepreneurs out there because a lot of people have all these great ideas for a podcast they want to do, a show they want to do, a nonprofit charity they want to create, a business, an event. And you think of this great idea, but then your second thought is, uh-oh, how am I going to get it funded? Because, we're all taught to have big dreams, but the big dreams cost money. And that's where sponsors come in. So I help people get corporate sponsors to underwrite their show, their event, their nonprofit, their whatever project they're doing. And I've been doing it for over 20 years. And it's very cool because sponsors give you money you don't have to pay back. And the reason they give you that is because, like you, they connect a company with their core consumers. And that's why sponsors can fund you.
Well, that sounds great. So what are your secrets for entrepreneurs who are looking for sponsorships?
Okay, so a couple of things you want to do as an entrepreneur. First of all, you want to do what we call the sponsor wish list, the list of companies that you would like to work with as a sponsor to have them fund you. Now, the way you do your wish list, it's all about your demographics. We always say your demographics are your destiny because for you with Passage to Profit, your demographics, your audience is entrepreneurs. What do entrepreneurs buy? They buy office supplies, they buy shipping, they have a bank account, etc. And then they also buy consumer goods in their personal lives. So you make your wish list. That's the first step. I'm going to give you 3 steps. The second step is you need to create a sponsor proposal, and it has to be an industry standard sponsor proposal. And then the third step is the funding step. And, I can't tell you exactly how much you'll make with sponsors. Most of our clients get between 10,000, even up to 100,000 from each sponsor. And there is no limit to the number of sponsors you can have. So it can be quite lucrative. You could do your 5, 6, 7-figure deals. You just combine a few different companies. So that's the basic process to getting corporate sponsors.
And what are some of your success stories, Linda?
Well, I'll tell you how I got started, and then maybe I'll give you a couple of examples. I got started because, and you'll love this, I wanted to do a women's small business expo because I was in the poverty trap. I was in an abusive relationship, and I got out of that situation because I started my own business. And I started it with my best friend, and we knew nothing about business. I was an art major, she was a cinema major, but we grew it to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And I wanted to show other women how to do what I had done. So, like I said, I had this great idea to do a women's small business expo, but then I said, uh-oh, how am I going to fund it? So my very first sponsors before I started my very first event were Bank of America, Walmart, and IBM. So before I even started, I made a profit. Because I had sponsors underwriting my events. And then after that, I got Microsoft and Staples and FedEx and, all these really, really great sponsors. And I think this is important for people to know. I had no experience with events and I had no following. Nobody knew who I was except for my brother-in-law and my cat. And I'm looking forward to doing the podcast because I could talk about my cat for another hour. But a lot of people think, oh, well, when I get this many people on my fan base, then I'll go after sponsors. No, you sell them on the concept.
So
Do you have to have all your branding and everything all set up first? I mean,
Yes,
if
you should, because sponsors don't want to start the train. They want to jump onto a moving train. So they want you to get your website up, your branding. They want you to do the basic things. You need a business account because they want to write a check to a business account. So you need to get your basic infrastructure and your brand going, and then you could go after sponsors.
Okay.
So Kevin, I'm sorry, Kenya, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I mean, sponsorships can be a little tricky in terms of, measuring ROI. So what do you say is a good return on investment for someone who's doing a sponsorship? And like, what are some of the KPIs that you put into place for your clients?
Great question, Kenya. Well, there are intangibles and tangibles in sponsorship. So let's talk about those tangibles first that you asked about, the metrics, likes, shares, web visits, etc. Those are the tangibles. Those are the actual metrics, attendees at an event, etc. But then there are intangibles like building goodwill, cause marketing. And this is how sponsorship changed after the pandemic because cause marketing became so important. People buy from companies who give back to the community. And that's really, you can't really measure things like that, but it's very, very big in the world of sponsorship. So sponsors know that there are certain things, yes, you can measure and you could give them a report on and show them metrics, but then there are certain things that you can't, like those things of brand building and cause marketing.
Kevin, do you have a question or comment for Linda?
Yeah, look, I think this is a really fascinating because it is different than, say, venture capital or seed rounds or that kind of funding. And I think we're all used to seeing sponsorships with, say, nonprofits, right? Well, we need a sponsorship for this program. But you're saying you're doing this as a for-profit, but the return for these sponsors is views, clicks, et cetera, which is almost on the edge of a social media star, because that's how they fund themselves. It's, here's the hair dryer I'm using today, and you would really love this hair dryer, right? So take us through that. How did you make that work?
I made it work because I started before social media, and I sold them on the concept. So I went to sponsors, like my first sponsor was Bank of America. And I said, hey, how would you like me to connect you to the biggest spending block on the planet, which is women? And I did so much research on the women's business market, found out that women are starting businesses at twice the rate of men. But more importantly, I found out that women make or influence over 85% of the purchasing decisions in America. So that's what you do when you want to get sponsors. You research your demographic, what they buy, where they go on the internet, what their lifestyle is. And that's how you sell sponsors, on the concept of who you can connect them with, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for sales. They're looking for brand loyalty. They're looking for lead generation.
Excellent. So can just about any business look for sponsors? I mean, there must be some, as a law firm, I'm not sure I would look for sponsors, but I mean, I guess it's possible, right? I mean, but it seems like there's really just certain types of businesses that lend themselves to sponsorship better. Is that right?
Yeah, sponsorship doesn't work for everybody. For a law firm, there may be some issues because you have confidentiality with your clients. I had a psychologist call me, and it didn't work for her either because of the confidentiality issue. So it doesn't work for every business. It probably wouldn't work for the neighborhood gas station or the neighborhood dry cleaner. You have to have some kind of influence. You have to have some kind of what we call extended reach. So if you have that, you can get sponsors.
So what are kind of some of the more typical challenges that somebody who's looking for sponsorship might face?
Some of the challenges are, first of all, doing that proposal, because the proposal is really important, because that's all sponsors see, and that's how they make their funding decisions. So I read a lot of proposals, and some of them are created by OpenAI and ChatGPT, and some of them are created by Canva. And sponsors are calling me saying, what's happening, Linda? I could tell this is a Canva proposal. I could tell it's created by ChatGPT. So you want to have the right proposal. That's a big challenge for people. And then another big challenge is really asking for the right amount of money, because asking for too little, and I think Kevin can relate to this because he deals with big companies, big money, asking for too little can hurt you in the world of sponsorship, because you're telling sponsors you have nothing of value and it's not worth their time.
Right.
That's very true. Yeah, I used to say it's a lot easier sometimes to get $100,000 than it is 1,000. 1,000 is not even worth my time. What are you going to introduce me to 3 people, right? So it is. There is a mindset there, but I think you have to work your way into it and have the guts to go up and say, "How about $100,000?" And here's what you're going to get for that 100,000. And I don't think you could spend your quote unquote ad/sponsor dollars any better than that.
So Linda, how do you get to those people that Kevin's talking about, the decision makers who actually hold the pocketbook strings? Strings.
Absolutely. So you're completely right, Elizabeth, because your relationship, it's not with a faceless corporation, it's with a person, it's with a human being, it's with the decision maker. And that's a big challenge in sponsorship, is finding that decision maker, because sponsor companies have thousands of employees. There's usually one person that can greenlight a sponsorship deal. A lot of people go on LinkedIn and they say, oh, I'll find a sponsor on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, that becomes an exercise in frustration, because a lot of sponsors don't even put themselves on LinkedIn, or they block content because they don't want to be slimed. So it's best to get a list of the decision makers, because I'm telling you, that is going to cut down on your time and your frustration and really lead you to the right people who can really greenlight that deal.
And those lists are thousands of dollars. I know, 'cause I looked.
Sometimes
Well-
they're expensive, absolutely. Now, my company has the list, and at the end, maybe you could tell people how to contact me, but we do have a list of the decision makers.
Well, how do people find you?
You can go to sponsorconcierge.com, or the better place to go is successwithsponsors.com. So just go to successwithsponsors.com and you could contact me through that website.
Okay.
So what does sort of a typical process look like then when you're looking for sponsors? So you have your sponsorship proposal and you have your list of preferred potential sponsors. How then do you follow up and connect your proposal to your preferred sponsors?
Okay, so you send your proposal. Most sponsors want you to introduce yourself by email, because they don't want to be surprised by a phone call, because they're usually busy. So you get the person and then you have your first conversation. This is really important. On your first conversation, you do not mention sponsor fees, because they want to see if you're a fit for their goals and their visions and what they want to accomplish. So you'll have a couple of conversations. You'll come up with a sponsor fee. Then you go to contract, and you have an agreement that you sign with them, because you're probably going to be working with companies that are bigger than you. So you want to protect your rights in the deal. Now, after I get the agreement signed, I start to implement. So for instance, if I tell a sponsor I'm going to put their logo on my website, I do that. I don't wait for the money to come in. Usually the money will come in the form of a physical check. And sometimes it comes in quickly. And as you know, in business, sometimes it takes a while, because they're setting you up as a new vendor. Now, after you've got that sponsor deal in place and you've done your happy dance and all that, the decision is just starting, because you have to keep the relationship going. You want to send a sponsor a report at least quarterly. You want to talk to them when there's something new. And then there's something called renewals. The renewal is, we suggest a 1-year contract with your sponsor, even if you're a podcaster. And then at the end of that year, they can fund you for the next year and the next year. So if you keep in touch with that sponsor and show them what you're doing and talk to them about the program and be open, because if they don't like something, like I had a bank sponsor and they said, well, we don't like what this thing you're doing. And I was devastated, but I said, you know what? If we change that, can we have another conversation? They said yes, and they sponsored me for 5 years because we were really open and we didn't let what we call residue build up, because sometimes they don't like something and then they just won't renew with you. You want to get that out in the open. So it's kind of a rinse and repeat process.
So are sponsors typically paying attention to what you're doing? It's not just sign it up, but they actually monitor, how you're using their logo and
Yes,
what kind
they
of
do. Yeah.
content you're creating?
Yes, they do, and you have to really stick to your what you told them that they would do, what your contract. But here's the cool thing about sponsors: you don't have to report back to the sponsors how you spent their money. You just have to fulfill your contract. So we'll take that example again of putting the logo on the website. If you said you're going to do that, you got to do that because they're going to check up on that. But you can spend the money in any way you want. You could pay yourself, you could hire a team, you could put the money in your business, etc. Because you don't have to submit a budget to a sponsor.
Ooh, that's great. Kenya, do you have another comment or question?
Yeah, I just was curious from an asset perspective, like about some of the programs that you're building and what someone can expect. Because I know events are great and like sponsorships are great, but like how are you amplifying these programs that you're putting together for people?
Okay, so by assets, do you mean the benefits that sponsors get?
No, I mean, like, what are the attribution tools? Like, so for example, are you using digital? Are you using, like, so say, for example, you have an event, like beyond the actual event itself, like, how are you scaling beyond the actual experiential piece?
Okay, so we're using digital and traditional because I ask a lot of people, I say, how are you going to promote what you do? And they say, oh, social media and the digital platforms. Sponsors are traditional, and they should be good news to you at WOR. And by the way, I've been on your station because radio, television, print, it's not dead. And sponsors love the traditional platforms as well as the digital platforms as far as the media mix. Now, people can also get media sponsors, and I've gotten media sponsors to help me get the word out. And that is really going to amplify your assets and your effectiveness with a sponsor. Another asset may be at an event, a meet and greet, an owned area where a sponsor, like I did for Verizon, we did a Verizon relaxation room at a conference. Where people came in and they got chair massages, and it was just a really cool thing because your feet get tired, and there was a monitor that had the Verizon logo and outside a traditional table with information about Verizon. But I thought that was a very creative way to promote Verizon with a relaxation room.
Well, this is excellent.
As long as everybody turned off their cell phone.
Yeah, but we have to wrap up. But once again, how do people get a hold of you?
Successwithsponsors.com, and go to successwithsponsors.com. And I even have a free gift for everybody who is watching and listening to us today, because I'll give you the #1 secret to getting your sponsors if you go to successwithsponsors.com.
Ooh, that's nice.
Sounds great. Well,
Well,
thank you very much. And our audience thanks you too.
yes. And now, last but not least, Steven Singer with I hate stevensinger.com.
I can't believe I'm meeting the real Steven
We have
Singer
seen
right
your
now.
billboard. So Steven Singer, what is this all about? You're a jeweler. Why would people hate you? Tell the story.
Well, you're about to find out right now. No, it's there's kind of an alter ego. We have Steven Singer Jewelers, which was founded in 1980, 43 years ago. And we have I Hate Steven Singer, which is the website. And we use that because it's a little stickier. It's easy. People can't spell jewelers. And it's become, it's like Google is a sticky word. It's a sticky name. There's certain things that are sticky that stay in your mind. And we've had quite a big success with I Hate Steven Singer. It started Well, the birth of it was 25 years ago. It actually started probably 21 or 22 years ago when it actually launched. And we've been running it ever since, and it's been great.
So how did you get that name?
Well, it's a long story. I'll give you the condensed version because the story is longer than we have time for. But the real true story, and then I'll tell you the other part of it. The real true story is, like I said, about a quarter of a century ago, I was waiting on a customer in our store, and it was a young couple, and this guy just spent, I don't know, $10,000 on an engagement ring. And there was another customer sitting right next to a gentleman sitting by himself. And this customer, the young couple, she said, "Can I give you a kiss?" She goes, "I love Steven Singer. I love the store. I love my ring. I love the whole experience." I mean, this girl's been waiting her whole life for an engagement ring, and she is over the moon. Meanwhile, this guy spent $10,000. I didn't do anything. All I did was make the ring. She should be kissing him, and she's thanking us and kissing us. I mean, she would just couldn't want to take pictures, and she's great. And the guy that's sitting right next to it looks with a deadpan look and turns around and looks at her. He goes, "You love Steven Singer?" "I hate Steven Singer." "You want to know why?" And the girl thinks, "Oh, this guy must be a complaint, must be a nut. I don't want to get involved." And she goes, "No, that's all right." She goes, "Let me tell you why." He goes, 20 years ago, I got my wife a ring from Steven Singer, and I had two grown children, one in college, one just starting college. And we had everything paid for, everything mapped out. We're ready for the next stage of our life. I get this ring from Steven Singer. My wife thanks me that night, and now I have another kid, and it's his fault. So I'm up with bottle feeding babies, and I have another college, and my whole life got screwed up, and it's all Steven Singer's fault. If I didn't give her this jewelry, everything would have been great.
Wow,
And
talk about a bad attitude. That's horrible. I mean,
so he said it in jest. And it's funny because the kid, the original I Hate Steven Singer baby, only found out when she was like 17 or 18 that she was the I Hate Steven Singer kid. And the story is absolutely true. And what happened was we were talking about it, a few days later. Said that was really, really funny. So we should make that into a commercial. And I said, you know what, we're going to do it. So we made it into a commercial. We made radio spots. We made billboard. We did everything we were going to do, and nobody would run it. We went to the radio station, which we'd already been on, by the way, for 20 years. And they said, "This is the dumbest idea we've ever heard. We're not going to run it. You're not going to do it. You're going to go out of business. We're just not going to participate in it." So it took me almost 2 years to get them to do it. We had to sign a legal document which you'll appreciate, that was like 2 or 3 inches thick, that I was going to hold them harmless, that I'm doing this on my own accord, that they've informed me that it's a bad idea, that their professional opinion was the worst, dumbest thing ever. Don't ever do it. And we did that with the billboard company. We had to do it with the radio stations, and we did it with everybody. So what we did in the middle of the night, we got these fake, like graffiti look stickers that look like graffiti, and we graffitied our whole building. It says "I Hate Steven Singer" all over the building. We changed our voicemail to say "I Hate Steven Singer." We changed our website to look like somebody had hijacked it, and it said "I Hate Steven Singer" all over it, like with graffiti. It looked like it was all like somebody destroyed it. And we put only one billboard on Interstate 95 in Philadelphia, so it looked like there was a really angry customer, angry person that put it up. It worked.
I was going to say, I've seen the billboards many times, and I always thought it was like a jilted fiance or something.
Well, that's what everybody thought. And originally it was either that I was cheating on my wife, I was a drug dealer, I had an angry girlfriend, I broke up with somebody. Everybody had all these different theories. And a matter of fact, the day we launched it, we had, I don't know, maybe 400 or 500 calls of people saying, "Listen, I don't know what you guys did, but I love you. I still go there. I don't know what happened, but I'm still going to come there." So everybody hated the idea. Everybody in my industry groups hated it. Everybody in my store, my family. I was on an island. Nobody wanted to do it. I said, "You don't see what I see. Everybody goes left. We're going to go right. Everybody sells love. We're going to sell hate." I said, "We're going to stand out." Nobody would do it. A year later, we won a Billboard of the Year. We won 2 Addies for advertising, and CBS asked me to speak at their national sales convention in New York to say what a brilliant idea this was. So the year before I was an idiot, the year later I was a genius. And we've rode that ever since, and it's been great. It's been a wonderful, wonderful thing. And people, every time I go somewhere, I've had, the governor of Pennsylvania, I've had the mayor of Philadelphia, different events. I've had different celebrities and different people. They'll see us at an event or something, and they'll just blurt out, "I hate Steven Singer," just because they think it's funny. And it becomes very
Of course, you
sticky.
do have to live with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
It's fine with me. Listen, I take it as a compliment everywhere we go and everywhere we do it. So it makes us stand out, and it's different. What it has evolved into was that's the true original story, is that all my competition hates me because we have a thing called a love guarantee, which we guarantee the diamond, the ring, and the relationship. So even if you just break up, we'll take it back. There's nobody else in the United States that does it, or nobody that I'm aware of that does it. Let me put it that way. So we go opposite with everything that we do, and it's worked very well for us.
So Kenya, what are your comments and thoughts?
Well, you're like the shock jock of advertising, right?
Well,
And you
a lot of people say that because we are the oldest continuous advertiser on Howard Stern.
yeah.
We've been with him since 1986 or 7, whenever he came to Philadelphia. So I've gotten that comparison. I don't have his success, his money, or his notoriety or anything like that, but we are mentioned a lot with that.
What's interesting about you and Howard, though, is that you kind of have a lot of similarities in how he's kind of progressed with his radio show, right? So, like, he had a lot of challenges and obstacles in the beginning when he was working on his syndication. He was kind of going in the opposite direction of what everybody else was doing from a broadcast standpoint. And as a marketer, you were kind of taking the same strategy. So it's interesting that you all kind of blended and kind of landed in the same space. I thought that was remarkable.
Well, there's two funny things with Howard. One of the things was, and we have a very nice relationship. As a matter of fact, one of the people on the show just got married in Las Vegas, and I was just there a few days ago for the wedding for the show, which was great. I mean, for this gentleman. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful relationship, us riding on his coattails and being together. But when he first came to Philadelphia, he couldn't buy a sponsor. He couldn't get like McDonald's or Coke or Pepsi or nobody that would have any kind of, he was like a pariah. So not only were we one of the first sponsors that go on there, I said to him, listen, I don't care what you say about us. Just mention our name once in a while. You can say whatever you want. Sometimes he sings our ad. He does crazy things. And there's nothing I'm going to write or we're going to write that's going to be better than anything he's going to say from the heart that talks about our relationship and what's going on and what's happening. So that's always been kind of our mantra, and it's been great.
That's awesome. Kevin, do you have a comment or a question?
Well, ChatGPT does. The phrase "I hate Steven Singer" is a memorable and effective advertising slogan used by jeweler Steven Singer. Its counterintuitive nature sparks curiosity and makes it stand out. If you want to create a new and memorable ad campaign via, you, consider the following strategies, and it gives me one. Everybody loves Steven's gems. It said this. It said this.
I think that was a kind of a miss myself.
Yes. Have you met Steven's sparkle? Steven's stones, unmatched in brilliance. I won't read the rest, but actually it's quite funny. I'm going to give ChatGPT, because at some point it runs out and you go, what else can I do? And it came up with some really, really good alternatives, which I would have been hard pressed to come up with. So congratulations.
Well, yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we do everything in marketing and advertising. One of the things is, like, nobody's tired, in my opinion, of Wendy's Where's the Beef, or Nike Just Do It, or Coke is the real thing. What the advertisers get tired of it, or the advertising agency gets tired of it, and they want to generate new copy and new business. But customers and the clients and the people out in the public aren't tired of it. So they change it just for the sake of change sake. Matter of fact, people like the consistency. People didn't like new Coke. They liked old Coke, the original Coke. And so we keep the I hate Steven Singer. People love it. I mean, we have Christmas ornaments to say I hate. We have shirts. We have all kinds of paraphernalia and things that we give out to people. And I have people that come like from all over the country. Somebody would come in from Washington, from Baltimore. I have people from LA that come in just to come in, get a picture, or they want an I hate Steven Singer. They don't even want to buy anything. They just want to get something that says I hate Steven Singer on it. And so everything that we do stays under the I hate Steven Singer umbrella, and then is underneath that. So we keep that focus on there, and then anything else we do is underneath that. I hate, like, why do other jewelers hate me? Well, maybe this is the reason, that type of thing.
you have the genuine diamonds. And there was something in the show notes that I thought was hilarious that you said about lab created diamonds. What was that? Do you remember?
It says nothing says I love you less than a lab grown diamond. It's a fake. It's like, I know my wife just had a big birthday and I got her a Louis Vuitton pocketbook. This is not a plug for them, but she would not want a Larry Vuitton pocketbook from the corner of 6th and 47th in New York. You know what I mean? That was made out of plastic. I know she wants a Louis Vuitton. And lab grown diamonds are, they're like Frankensteins. They're made in a machine in a laboratory. They are not the same as natural, real earth-born diamonds. They are very similar, and they're the closest thing to natural earth-born diamonds, but they're not the same. And anything that you can mass produce as much as you want of, picture it as oceanfront real estate. God's not making any more. That's why oceanfront real estate is so expensive. Diamonds, real natural diamonds, are a sign of affection, a show of commitment. It's part of the marriage contract, and they're enduring and they have intrinsic value. Decades, hundreds of years. And you can give all kinds of examples to that. And while I'm not saying you necessarily buy a diamond for it as an investment, it's a nice thing that if you spent $5,000 or $10,000 on a sofa and you were moving and you said, you know what, I'm moving now, I'm going from this apartment to this house, I don't need the sofa. You can't sell it. You'd have to pay somebody $100 to take it out of your house. It has no value. The reason that, God forbid, when somebody does, unfortunately, they break up or it doesn't work out and they try to sell the diamond back, they don't say, listen, I have this microwave here. I don't need it anymore. We broke up, let me sell it. Let me get rid of it. Diamonds always had, they always have some value, and they're portable, the hardest substance known to man. So, they essentially last forever. You don't have to oil it, water it, paint it. But lab-grown diamonds are like the plague of our industry, and I don't believe in them. We have never sold them and never would. They've gone down 95% in value in the last 5 years.
Are jewelers required to disclose whether it's natural or lab-grown?
100%. First off, FTC, the Federal Trade Commission of the United States, says the only thing you can call a diamond is a natural earth-born diamond that came from the ground, from a riverbed or from a mine. Anything else has to have the simulant name, the prefix in front of it. It has to say simulant, man-made, lab-grown, or whatever. It must disclose right up front, and it has to be in front of the word diamond. The only thing you're allowed to legally call a diamond is a diamond that came from the earth.
So, and if you're buying an expensive diamond and you have questions about it, do you recommend somebody get it inspected or
well, I can say you always want to buy from a reputable jeweler. You always want to make sure it has the proper guarantees and warranties. You always want to make sure it has a certification from GIA. GIA stands for Gemology Institute of America, and it's like a separate, like a birth certificate for the diamond. And if you do those things, and most of all, my whole business is about love and trust. If you have to trust and have confidence in whoever you're getting it from, and that would be the most important. And there's many great reputable jewelers all over the country, all over the world, but that you can do that with. But you just want to stay away from some of the things that are fly by night.
One last question, and then we have to wrap up. Sorry, but do you also design jewelry for people?
Well, I started the first 10 years of my jewelry career as a manufacturer, designer, wholesaler. We sold all the other stores all over the country. We used to travel. So in our facility, we have our own shop, our own designer. We do our own CAD, computer-aided design. We do our own wax making for everything. And we make all kinds of custom jewelry and we've done a lot of really cool things for a lot of like celebrities and sports teams and rock stars and all kinds of things that I'm very proud of, and different things, different logos and different pieces of jewelry for them. And it's been great. And whether you're just coming in for a $2,000 engagement ring and you have a custom idea you want to do, we will create it for you. It doesn't cost any more to make a custom ring to do it like that. And again, as far as I know, we're the only ones in the country that will exchange, return, replace. We'll do, even if we make it as exactly what you asked for, and we make it exactly perfect. You say, you know what? Now that I see it, it's not hitting the mark. I want to do something else. We'll do it. We'll take it back. We'll
So
change
why
it. for
would
you.
anybody hate that?
Yeah, you never know. Where are you located? Are you in
Well,
Philly?
we have our showroom is at the other corner of 8th and Walnut in Center City, Philadelphia, about a block away from Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. We have fulfillments all over the country where we ship because we ship 24/7 all over the country. And we're the thing that sets us apart, or one of the things is we're real jewelers in terms of we touch and feel everything ourselves. We don't have a drop center or call center in India. Everybody that you talk to, it works in our building or has worked in our building. So we're very, very proud of that.
Well, great. Thank you. So it's IHateStevenSinger.com. And if you're in Philly, drop in and see his showroom. The next time we're there, I'm going to. So we've come to the end of this segment. Listeners, you are listening to Passage to Profit, The Road to Entrepreneurship with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, Kenya Gibson, our special guest today, Kevin Surace, and we will be right back.
When I was a kid, I used to love the holidays, but my favorite times of the year were actually 2 nights, twice a year. It was that night we would take the clock off the wall and readjust it by hand. Daylight savings time and back. Wow, I thought that was fascinating. It was like being at the Hall of Science. My first question was, we all have to do this? What if somebody forgets? Next question, how's it working out for you? I don't think daylight savings time is a bad thing, really. We just need more options. That's the thing. Like healthcare elections. Let's say I want to take 15 minutes and hold on to it this year and then save the other 45 and accrue it into the next year. If I do that the following year and the year after that, and maybe even add some time onto that, well, by 6-7 years later, I've added practically a year onto my life. Think of what that'll do for healthcare premiums. Unbelievable. You know, when technology, science, and all the other advancements come together to make this thing happen properly, we're going to have a world that is absolutely just like this one, only more aggravating and complicated.
Welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit. What an amazing show. I learned a lot today about a lot of different things. And I learned about Steven Singer, and I learned about artificial intelligence, and I learned about sponsorships. All very important and useful things. So
Absolutely. So now it's time for the question. I am going to start with Kevin Surace, and his website is kevinsurace.com. That's Kevin, SURACE.com. Kevin, what do you wish AI could do for you?
I wish AI would come and cook and clean. It's very simple.
Okay, so
I hear no disagreement from the panel, right?
No, we anticipated this answer. So
with sponsor concierge.com, what do you wish AI could do for you?
Well, as you know, I'm a big cat lover, animal lover. I wish they would come and clean out the litter box because that's one of the things I don't love about having a cat. So that would be great.
Yes, I agree. So Steven Singer with IHateStevenSinger.com, Diamond Man. What do you wish AI could do for you?
Well, I have 2. One, I heard Kevin articulate something wonderful, what the AI does for older people in terms of listening to their stories over and over again. So if I could just get that to follow my wife around and stop telling me the same stories over again and do that for me with my wife, that would be excellent because she yells at me if I listen or I don't listen. So that would be terrific.
I know who's going to hate Steven Singer tonight.
I was going to
There
say,
you go.
now.
I'm going to blame it on Kevin. I'm going to say this genius that I was on this podcast with that came up with it wasn't me. But my personal, not necessarily a business thing, but is I'm really looking forward to what it does in medical advancements, that it can read every medical paper all over the world and know everything at all times, that no matter how great your doctor or your team or your hospital is, that they can have this wealth of knowledge and, exponentially change, medicine and medical diagnosis and things like that. That's why I think is one of the giant payoffs for AI.
I agree. So Kenya Gibson, our media maven.
Well, Steven stole my joke. So I was going to say, I hope it helps to reprogram my husband.
Well, why don't we introduce your husband to my wife and they can talk to each other?
But I guess for me, I'm in a similar vein in terms of like just its ability to maybe create a better, more well society overall. I mean, obviously there's a lot of advances in the wellness space that I would like to see around like fitness and nutrition and people like being able to just live better. So if it can create some advancements in that space, I would be happy to see that.
I agree. Richard Gerhardt Law, patent, trademark, copyright attorney.
There are so many opportunities for AI and so many things that I'd like to see automated, but the thing that I dislike the most is brushing my teeth. And so if I could find, I guess that's more of a robot than AI, but if there were an automatic toothbrusher out there, I would be really happy for that. So.
Oh, well, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So for me.
And what about you?
Well, I have to go with Kevin. Cook and clean. I want Rosie the robot from the Jetsons.
Well, at least you didn't say a new husband, so that was I feel like I lucked out there.
Nobody can replace you, Richard.
Well, that's probably true.
We laugh when we say this.
So anyway, well, that's it for us on this episode. Thank you to the Passage to Profit team, and look for our podcast tomorrow. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram. That's at Passage to Profit Show on Instagram, and on X, which I guess is formerly Twitter, at Passage to Profit, and on YouTube. And you can join our new Facebook group. Search for Passage to Profit Show Listener Community, where you can post questions that you would like to answer on the show and interact with the Passage to Profit team. That would be Elizabeth and I, and maybe Noah, and Kenya. And for all your patent, trademark, and copyright needs, our firm Gerhardt Law offers free consultation. So contact us at gerhardtlaw.com. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week on Passage to Profit.